Hi everyone, welcome into the Irish NFL show presented by Trust Gaming and also presented by Matchbook Betting Exchange. We're delighted to be here, week 7 upon us, another Sunday. Delighted to be joined by Colin Cronin, Brian O'Leary, Mark Cockerell. Lads, we're not in London this week, but we are on the internet instead and want to welcome everybody on this Sunday morning. I guess start off with you, Colin. Welcome in. A great result for your Broncos in Thursday Night Football, my friend, and mine.
That's what makes today tolerable, Michael. That I don't have to watch the Broncos, obviously, with just a horrific performance on Thursday. Fair play, D'Ernest Johnson, 146 yards on your first start in the league. Kid apparently DM'd every single team in the AAF in 2018 to get a shot, and Orlando took a chance on him. And look, he was brilliant. But I suppose for the Broncos defensively, it was awful. I watched this game for 3 decades, and that opening drive for Cleveland's touchdown was amongst the worst defense that I've ever seen. It was an absolute abomination. It was shocking. And for the Broncos, I think what you're talking about, like, is Kyle Brandt's comments. We mentioned them in our preview show, but Kyle Brandt said of the Broncos, I don't know what this team is. I don't know what the organization is. I don't know if there is a team we talk about less often on this show than the Denver Broncos. That includes smaller markets. That includes teams who haven't won. What was their record last year? Who cares? What was their record the year before? Who cares? That tells you where the Broncos are at. They're just a non-entity, without an owner, with a head coach out of his depth, with quarterbacks and players who are trying, but clearly there's no game plan. Delighted we have other games to discuss today, honestly.
Yep, delighted to see Jeff Bezos buying the team in February, and I'm not going to talk anymore about that until then. Brian, welcome in. We're not in London, but we're over the internet, from Dublin to Tyrone to around the world.
Yeah, we're back to our normal platform for foreseeable anyway, until we get back together and do another live show. But the past few weeks have been very enjoyable. You know, the shows when the forwards are together are always very enjoyable. From the Aviva to London to even the Woolshed, they're always great. But we're back, and we've got a very reasonably good slate of games to go through. And I don't want to harp on too much on the game tours, and I think Colin is pretty much summed it up. But I think both ourselves, like from a Giants perspective and from a Broncos, I think we've both been guilty of misevaluating defenses going into the season, because we both felt our defense would be both very strong, and we've seen at this stage of the season it's just not to be. And it looks like it's going to be a long road for probably all of us, because I think Mark's expectations of where the Patriots are probably where he thought they would be, and I don't think come December any of us will be in the playoffs. But at the same time, the NFL is a great season anyway, and there's a lot of interesting games to discuss this weekend.
Of course, and Mark, as Brian said there, we're on the one road together.
Yeah, Northmen, Southmen, comrades all. Tyrone wasn't in that song, Michael. Belfast, Cork and Donegal.
Yeah, Tyrone's not a city, but okay.
Yeah, but close enough. Yeah, okay. Look, I mean, Brian kind of alluded to the key thing there. All our teams aren't going to be involved, but that's why the Irish NFL show is going to be the best place for the playoffs, because we're going to be completely neutral in relation to the 14 teams that will remain at that point. So obviously don't just follow us for the regular season, but just wait until the postseason kicks off. Yeah, look, I don't know if I'm as positive you, Brian, about the slate of games this weekend. It's by Mageddon. You've got... even with 18-week season, 6 teams on a bye this week. So we have a reduced slate, and we have a number of games that seem lopsided, shall we say. But there are storylines that always abound in the NFL. There are reunions to beat the band. There's more reunions than an American reunion or a Friends cast reunion this weekend in the NFL. It's quite a weekend for that. And this is why we love the NFL, because there's several games that seem on paper, this is clearly going this way. But the principle of any given Sunday always abounds, and surprises can spring. So we look forward to watching and seeing what superhumans do at the weekend.
Superhumans. Lovely explanation of Mac Jones. Let's look at the first game today ahead of I can't believe it's week 7 already. And next week, boys, is the week that we get the games an hour earlier, so it's the best week of the year. But the first game, Bengals going to the Ravens. Bengals 4-2, Ravens 5-1. Colin, this Bengals team, are they for real?
Yeah, I think they are for real. I think the only issue for them is that the Ravens are really for real, as is Lamar Jackson. But look, this I think could be an intriguing game. It really could. And if you're the Bengals, you're in with a puncher's chance on this. Joe Burrow is the best in the league against the blitz. Nobody blitzes quite like the Ravens. Now they showed against the Chiefs that they don't have to blitz. They can, they can hold back as well if needs be. So I'm kind of fascinated to see the approach they take to Burrow. Do they kind of look at it and say, young QB, we're going to see if you really can do it against the blitz, or given how good Burrow and Ja'Marr Chase have been already, do they kind of hold off? I think that's going to be an interesting one. Obviously, the Bengals have been pretty good against the run, but nobody runs quite like the Ravens. And I think Ja'Marr Chase against Marlon Humphrey will be really interesting. I have the Ravens winning this one, but I do think that the Bengals are going to put it up to them. I don't think this is going to be an easy game in any way, shape, or form. And would I be shocked if the Bengals were to get a victory? No. But I think on a balance of probabilities, the Ravens and Lamar Jackson have just found ways in recent weeks to win. Coaching has been absolutely outstanding, and I have them going to 6-1 after winning today.
Yeah, you talk about blitz heavy, but I went back and looked at the game last week, and in particular around how Martindale, because he got so much praise around how he literally eliminated that Chargers offense, which has been so productive throughout the first few weeks of the season. And it was predominantly on the fact that they took Mike Williams and Keenan Allen out of the game. And for the Bengals, like the front runner is obviously Lamar Chase. He's had 5 touchdowns already, standout rookie. So for me, I think I imagine there'll be a similar enough game plan. He'll scheme ultimately to take him out of the game and say, right, T. Higgins, Tyler Boyd, you're the guys on the Bengals side that's going to have to beat us. But they're good players, but are they at the level where they can go out and beat this Ravens team? I'm not so sure. And for the Ravens, I mean, you'd have to argue they're the best team in the AFC right now. Having lost it week 1 in a game which was a very topsy-turvy game against Las Vegas Raiders, they arguably could have won that game. There was missed field goals and stuff and went into overtime. They could be unbeaten. They've won 5 in a row. So for me, I think the Bengals, we touched on last week at our show on Saturday night in terms of I kind of suggested that Zach Taylor's the coach of the year, and they are certainly going in the right direction. I think they'll be in the hunt for a wild card, but for me, this Ravens team are up there in terms of potentially going to the Super Bowl. So for me, the Ravens will win.
Brian, you rightly mentioned they're winning 5 on the bounce. There's only 4 teams that have won at least 5 on the bounce at the moment in the NFL. There's the Cowboys, the Packers, the Cardinals, of course, at 6-0, and the Ravens. The thing for me is, I just think the Ravens are the weakest out of those 4 teams and the weakest of the bunch there. And when I look at the Bengals and the way their defense has performed this season so far, I'm very impressed by what they do. I mean, the betting nugget that I'll share for people to lose money on is that the Bengals are 5-1 against the spread the under on the overall points this year. That's a lot to do with the fact of the way in which they play, because their defense is tight and they run the ball quite well with Joe Mixon behind a decent offensive line. Wouldn't trust them completely in pass pro in protecting Joe Burrow, but they have been creating gaps in the run game. Joe Mixon always can be counted on for an angry run or 2, whether on or off the field, of course. So the Bengals have a game here and a game plan that can stymie the Ravens. And if you're ever going to do it, you're 4-2, they're 5-1. You're literally 1 game out of the lead of the division. And I can assure you the Cleveland Browns will be cheering on the Bengals from the sideline as well to keep the Ravens within striking distance. I still don't believe in these Ravens. So screw it. I'm going with the Bengals this weekend to win this game.
Yeah, tip the Bengals, Munster Bengals, Bengals UK, there's a lot of Bengals groups popping up, and you don't want to jinx the Bengals, and I think Mark just has by going with them. I'm joking, Mark. I'm not really convinced on the Ravens either. I know they beat the Chargers 34-6 last week, but this is a guy in Lamar Jackson that continually goes to the playoffs now 2 years in a row, and is either one and done or just doesn't show up. I think the Bengals are a good team. Seeing guys, not just your Jamar Chase, who's having a fantastic rookie season, but seeing guys like Auden Tate getting a touchdown last week and seeing Joe Burrow get 3 touchdowns in the game, they look older than the team looks more older and more experienced than what they should be. I think this game will be tight today, but I'm taking the Bengals. I'm taking the Bengals to go 5-2, baby. I got Thursday night's game right, and I've probably already screwed my chances, but I'm picking the Bengals.
We're far removed from where we were last season, early on in the Irish NFL show, where we were quickly moving on from Bengals game. It's certainly been a hectic 12 months for them, and it's great to see teams, up and coming teams like the Bengals.
Absolutely, and fair play to them.
There's an awful lot of Lamar Jackson slander on this show. Lamar Jackson's he's a phenomenal quarterback. There's an awful lot of love out there for the likes of Kyler Murray, who hasn't even been to the playoffs. Lamar Jackson is a young QB. He's playing with a team with all sorts of injuries. He's finding ways to beat teams. I think this Ravens team keep doubting them, because they seem to enjoy that.
I couldn't agree with you more, Colin. Sorry, Michael. I couldn't agree with you more. And he's 5-0 against the Bengals. So if it goes the way me and Colin think, he'll be 6-0.
Let's see what happens today. The next game is at Lambeau Field. The Packers getting their groove on 5-1. Welcome the WFT Washington football team 2-4. So the Washington football team have got Green Bay today, the Broncos next week. Colin, looking at this game, can you see any other result than a Packers winner, or do you think Washington have a chance today?
You always think you have a chance in the NFL, but I mean, look, the Washington football team have been one of the disappointments of the season. I mean, take your pick amongst whether their defense has been more disappointing or the Broncos' defense. Washington giving up 31 points a game, the worst in the NFL. And even last week, right, when they actually played well for kind of 3 quarters against the Chiefs, they sacked Mahomes 3 times. They intercept him twice. He still puts almost 400 yards on them, and the Chiefs win. So they just can't seem to catch a break. And then you go from facing Patrick Mahomes, that elite QB who finds ways to win, to Aaron Rodgers, who didn't play particularly well last week, but they find a way to win. And I think now, even though it's been that way for a while, right, and it's been obvious to Packers fans and probably people watching the league closely, I think the wider world has woken up to the fact that it's no longer just the Aaron Jones show at running back. I mean, they kind of have the two-headed monster there as well. And I'd worry for Washington. Packers have woken up in terms of getting sacks. They've 7 sacks in the last 2 games. That's a huge concern. I don't think Washington will have enough. You've seen Riverboat Ron come out and talking about Landon Collins, going to use him as a downhill player. When you're at that, your highest paid defensive player, and you're talking about trying to change them around mid-season, big concerns. I think the Packers are going to 6-1, and all that stuff with Aaron Rodgers over the summer. He will be sitting pretty, the king of the North.
Yeah, where majority of the offseason was about Rodgers, and I suppose Rodgers is tied to the Packers. This season, and Mark touched on the teams that have won 5 games in a row, I would suggest that the Packers are going quietly about their business. Very little spoke about throughout the first few weeks. I know obviously week 1 was a bit of a, there was a story in itself, that the fact that they lost so convincingly to the Saints, but Rodgers last week was a story around the touchdown more so than the performance, quietly going about their business. 5-1, they're definitely, in my opinion, going to 6-1. Like at the start of the season, if someone said to you, when these two sides match up, the 7th best defense against the 31st, I think you'd sway it in terms of it's going to be Washington against this Packers. And in fact, it's gone the opposite way. And this Packers defense, I know last week people were questioning, is the secondary going to be sustainable in the long run because of injury? But so far, so good. And this Packers defense is playing well. And you just touched on, they're starting to get more sacks. it's difficult to see how Washington will win and keep this game close. For me, a team that's now conceded 30 points in 4 games in a row, which is a record for all the wrong reasons. The first time Washington football team has ever done that in its history. For me, the Packers are going to win. I think this one's going to be a blowout.
I know Michael won't remember this, but maybe the 2 other gentlemen will. But do you remember the Benny Hill show? Now, I'm not bringing this up in the context of various emails that have been exchanged with the Washington football team, but more in the fact, do you remember there used to be a bit where it was all speeded up and you had the funny music, and everyone's just going all over the place? That is what I think of when I see the Washington secondary most weeks, because they are good for a complete and utter breakdown on the coverage at some point, if not multiple points during the game. And you're going up against not only Aaron Rodgers, but of course Davante Adams, who will seize upon that and strike with precision at the occasion when it does occur. For me, it breaks down pretty simple. I mean, Washington team actually, not only have they a terrible record, they're 1-5 against the spread this season. The Packers, the key stat for me, is 16-2 at home under Matt LaFleur. I'm the same as you guys. I cannot see past. Whereas I can make a case for the Bengals. It's very difficult making a case for the Washington in how poorly they've played this season, and the off-field distractions they're obviously dealing with as well. No, just not good enough. They haven't put 4 quarters together. For me, it has to be the Pack.
Yeah, just in terms of talking about the off-season issues, or sorry, the off-field issues with Washington. The whole Taylor thing last week, I didn't really talk about it much because we were in London. It was embarrassing and pathetic for the man's family that happened. Who are they going to retire next week? Because there's something else going on this week. That's the way I see it. They're not like the Raiders, who can go to a team and play really well in the face of destruction all around them. And I can't see how they can go to Lambeau Field today and score any more than 14 to 21 points, even if Taylor Heineke plays well. I do think they'll score 30 or 40 points next week, but we'll talk about that next week. I've dropped Robert Tonyan on my fantasy team, which means he will score a couple of touchdowns today. And I expect Rodgers to either flow or hand it off for 4 to 5 scores today. I think this will be over by halftime, and the Packers will drift to 6-1.
Not related to this game, but, I had to make a point, but Mark referring to Benny Hill. I thought the Benny Hill incident was last Saturday night in London when we were running around housing estates trying to get taxis after jumping out of taxis.
Who is Benny Hill?
Just gonna YouTube.
I'll do it after the show. The next game sees 2 teams that were in London, albeit in different games. The Falcons 2-3, who had a bye week column, going up against the Dolphins, who, let's be frank, these 2 gentlemen beside us went to the press conferences last week, and just from speaking to guys, I don't want to say they didn't want to be there, but the general vibe in Miami does not seem great right now.
No, it certainly doesn't. And we're a few days on from the latest round of the Deshaun Watson trade is imminent. But the fact that, that keeps happening, and the fact that they just don't seem enamored with Tua, which honestly I get. I think Tua really struggles to throw deep. We saw that in person last week, and I watched him have to put everything into those medium passes. Maybe there's still, I suppose a legacy of the injury, but he just doesn't look like a franchise QB right now. And the Dolphins, as I said on Monday's show, are Damian Harris fumble away from being 0-6. The defense hasn't worked for them, and Brian Flores just looks all at sea. For the Falcons, you'd have concerns about the Falcons as well, right? Because defensively, they're just awful against the pass. But again, I don't think Tua is going to be able to really take advantage of that. We saw Kyle Pitts have a breakout game, and Calvin Ridley is back, although there is still some mystery around why he missed time, but he is back, and obviously they have Patterson there as well. The Dolphins struggled against Trevor Lawrence, who is going to be a superstar in the league. Matt Ryan is a very good QB, but never entered that like upper tier, the real elite. But I think he will be good enough to get the Falcons over the hump, and they'll go to 500 after today's game.
Yeah, I'm sure Mark might make a point on this as well, but having been to the press conference and having the fortune to be there when Brian Flores passes in the airport on the way home, he certainly looked like a demoralized head coach after that game. I don't know, it was more so down to his play calling and the challenges. I did think there was some positives. I say some positives to the game last week, and probably player positives more so than the team playing together in unison. Thought Waddle really good, 2 touchdowns. Tua, I felt, played reasonably well. Bearing in mind he's coming back off a, cracked ribs, and Kazitsky looks like a really, really good tight end. But at the same time, if you haven't gone to the 2 games and haven't been in London, I think there's a better feeling coming off that Falcons game than there was last week. The Dolphins could have won that game last week. That game was nip and tuck, and I think whoever had the ball last, and even if they had won, I still would have felt that the Falcons over the 2 weeks looked a better team. They're coming off a bye. Obviously, they've been to London. They're back there fresh, where the Dolphins are probably one of the rare teams, and we have seen in the past, that play the following week after being in London. And I'm not sure, having looked at the record, it's very conclusive in terms of whether it's a good thing or a bad thing. Kyle Pitts, for me, that week in London was fantastic, and he has over 300 yards for a tight end, which is the best since 1970. So he's only scored 1 touchdown. He is shown, and I think collectively, as the games have gone on, he's improved. Cordell Patterson's a wild card from the season, and as you touched on, they've got Ridley. They've also got Gage back. The only concern on the defense is the defense that struggles. Dante Fowler's gone, who was going to be one of their better players on defense. He's out of the game. But for me, I'm with you, Colin. I think the 2 weeks off will help the Falcons, and the pressure then mounts on Flores. Falcons for me.
Yeah, Kyle Pitts has 308 yards so far this season. Jalen Waddle, who we were all impressed with, has 301, which just goes to show, we talk about his London breakout, but Pitts has quietly been accumulating the yards, and hopefully will prove, for Falcons fans, prove worthy of that high draft pick, of course. Teams that haven't had a bye coming back from London, it's only happened to 4 teams in the past. They're actually 2-2. So it's not all doom and gloom. But as Brian, as you alluded to, it was like a funeral procession is the best way I can describe it, of the Dolphins walking through Stansted Airport. I mean, Flores was walking through straight off with Tua and with Dan Marino, and Marino he looked old, in fairness. Like, he's not the Dan we all remember back in the day, but he looked like, he'd seen a ghost. He didn't want to even be there and stuff. So they've a lot to come back from. But in terms of positives, you mentioned Kazitsky. Kazitsky is huge, by the way. Did I say that last week? He is massive as a man. It is terrifying how substantial he is. And obviously he had a game to beat. The Dolphins getting a couple of players back who didn't, unvaccinated, travel to London last week. So that will be a bit of a boost. And they are at home, guys. Let's look at the positives for the Dolphins here. They feel like they need a performance. The Falcons are not the most intimidating team in the NFL, let's face it, this season. Dolphins are coming back home, 1-5. They need a lift. They need to lift their fans. They want to perform in front of them. And okay, Tua has never thrown for 300 yards in consecutive games, but maybe, just maybe, this is the time he breaks it. The Dolphins secondary manages to match up with the return of Ridley and the threats that the Falcons have, and the combination of the threats that Miami have breaks the mold a little bit more. I agree with your points around Tua. 3rd and 14 when he heaved it, and it looked like a heave downfield into double coverage, was worrying. His receivers bailed him out on a couple of 50-50 throws. But at the same token, he then led a great drive, that 91-yard drive, and the opening drive was fantastic as well. Maybe there's still hope and the consistency can be brought back. I'm not giving up on Miami just yet. They've got a great run after this game where they might come back, and Brian Flores is a really, really, really good coach. But does he fall into that category of a great coordinator and not a great head coach? I think the next few weeks will determine that future and fate. But for today, Dolphins.
Did the Dolphins lads stop off at Itsu or Pret or Weatherspoon in Stansted?
Everything was closed, Michael. There was nothing to eat. Nothing. Disgusting.
It's too close, as Stan says. It's a sad sight when it's too close, boys and gates, 50 to 60.
They could have got a W.H. Smith sandwich if they had held on. That's about the extent of it.
That's why I had to eat pizza on Monday Night Football. We're all in my club, still starving from the food deprivation.
Yeah, and I looked at Mark and I got hungry. So.
Remember, it's a Sunday morning, gentlemen. Well, first off, we're talking about Miami there, Mark. They were playing the Jaguars last week. I mean, it wasn't as if they were playing the Harlem Globetrotters or the, insert year here, New England Patriots. Like, come on, like let's get it out there. The Dolphins were piss poor last week. Speaking to guys that work for different sports outlets, will not name them. They were disgusted at the way that some of them acted in the press conferences and generally last week. But look, that's up to them. The reality is the team that they're playing today, the Atlanta Falcons, went to London, embraced it to the point where Arthur Blank was delighted. He loved Tottenham. He loved it, man. He came in, he was enjoying it. But the thing that really got me was Matt Ryan in Tottenham. I really enjoyed watching Matt Ryan, a guy that probably deserves more from his career, even though he really had it on a plate and he still messed it up. Let's not talk about that. But to see Kyle Pitts get his breakout game and for it to be in London is great. But I really like that combination of Mike Davis and Cordell Patterson at the run game. And again, today, I think this will not be close, boys. I just can't see how, outside of Jalen Waddle, the Dolphins might get points on the board. I think Tua, after the week that he's had in London and after all the news of Deshaun Watson this week, will be like, nah. And will Flores see Halloween? That's a good question. Mark?
Yeah, I was going to say, Michael, look, we weren't at the Friday press coverage, which I know a couple of the journalists are referring to, but in all fairness to the Dolphins, post-game conference, they had 7 players out speaking to the press. They stayed there for any questions that were had. They showed up and kind of put themselves out there. I mean, Flores obviously took the brunt in the beginning. Tua was next up and kind of answered and took the role for the team. But I think they did represent themselves well in terms of putting themselves up. I mean, we won't talk about the NFL contractual obligations they have, of course, but there wasn't any bad attitude in relation to it in terms of responsibility.
Yeah, that's my bad. It was mostly Friday by the sounds of it, just from people that we weren't on the ground, so I can't. I retract those comments for the press conference.
I'd just like to make a point. Sorry, Michael. Not referring to the game itself last week. Like, we see these press conferences. It has to be difficult for any team, any coach, to come in. What was it, 10 minutes after a game? Emotions are still running high, and try to be as fair and as objective as they possibly can about the game. Like, they haven't even got their head around what's happening in the game. That last 2 minutes in the game last week between the 4th and 1 that the Dolphins went for and didn't get it, and then it looked like they were going for Hail Marys, and then they weren't going for Hail Marys, and people were saying Urban Meyer called a blinder, and including ourselves, including me when we recorded after the game, taking a few days to go through it. People are criticising Urban Meyer for allowing 12 seconds to go up the clock. The last 5 minutes of that game were chaos. So for a coach, a player to come in straight after the game and answer the questions, and to be fair, like, they got grilled. Like, Mark was, quite nice to them. The Miami guys might as well have been sitting on the stage with them. They were that close, and they were going to town on them. So,
I've got to share that one. I mean, I think we talked about it off camera and everything, but I actually asked Flores about the 2 coaches' challenges made, and I kind of set him up nicely enough to kind of say, Coach Flores, you had the 2 coaches' challenge in the 4th quarter there, obviously. One of them was reviewed very quickly by the officials, and it seemed like he touched the punt. What were your feelings and what was the thought process going through it? And he gave a really lovely answer and detailed answer in relation to it. But the Miami guys, we just said to him, what were you thinking on the first challenge, which was a limited benefit? And after losing the first challenge, why are you challenging that second one? The antipathy towards him and the team seemed pretty strong. And obviously, there's a massive Miami fan base, obviously, in the UK and Ireland. I know I see enough in it that there's still hope. And I still think I've seen him win Super Bowls with the Patriots, for example. He's a coach who still deserves more time. But Mr. Stephen Ross is getting on a few years and might not have the patience.
In the division that he's in, Mark, he definitely deserves more time. The Jets against the Patriots is next. The Jets are 1-4. And the New England Patriots are 2-4 going into week 7 in the NFL. Colin, who have you got to this game? Is at Gillette Stadium?
Yeah, Patriots looking for first home win and to bounce back from Dak hanging 445 yards on a Bill Belichick defense, the most of Bill's tenure in New England. That said, like what a nice game to have for that. For me, I think Matt Jones has been up for through the first 3 weeks. He was probably the most impressive rookie. I think Trevor Lawrence has kicked it on a gear, and we're seeing the difference and why Trevor Lawrence went number one. And Brian is right. The last 5 minutes of the game last week were chaos, and Trevor Lawrence kept his head around when all those around him were losing theirs. You're seeing the maturity there. But I think Matt Jones has been really good. I think what the Patriots need to do is let him cook. I think they have been super conservative with him. Brian and I have discussed that. It may have cost them on particularly the Bucs game. Rookies are going to make mistakes, but if you don't allow him to make those mistakes, I mean, the Patriots will end up winning 6-7 games and not going anywhere. Today would be a day to let him have at it, because outside of the pass rush, the Jets don't have anything else really going on. Nothing else is really working for them, and it's going to take time because they're so deep in the mire. But we saw Davis Mills have his way with Bill Belichick's defense. I don't think Wilson is going to have that. He's been sacked 18 times. He's got 9 interceptions to 4 touchdowns. He hangs onto the ball for more than 3 seconds. They've struggled to get the run game going. As much as it is kind of any given Sunday, if the Patriots show up and do what they should do, the Patriots should get their first home win, and we'll move to 3 and 4. I think I don't see the Jets having enough today.
I saw a Patriots beat writer refer to this game as the sandwich game, because last week they had Dak Prescott and next week they got Justin Herbert in LA, and a kind of sense of this could be the game that they just don't pay enough attention to because they're focused on playing those 2 great quarterbacks. I find that very hard to believe. The Jets had scored the fewest points in the league this season. We saw in week 2, the Patriots took 4. The Patriots defense has played reasonably well this season. Last week against a really high explosive offense, they were on the field for a long time. And that game was still there for the winning for them, because again, Belichick, despite the players at his disposal, will always find ways to put them in a position to potentially win games. But for me, the Jets, no rookie's got into Foxborough and won since 2008, and I don't see that changing anytime soon. So for me, I think the Patriots, this is an ideal one in terms of winning, and then obviously looking ahead to the game next week in LA. And it's the Patriots for me.
Look, the Patriots have a lot of flaws. They wouldn't have a record of 2 and 4 if they didn't. There are a few players that after the Cowboys game were coming out and saying, "Oh, we're a good team. Our record isn't showing what it is. Oh, we're a few plays away from winning a couple of games." And Colin alluded to the Damian Harris fumble. Stevenson fumbled, get the key point in another game. And they've been there or thereabouts. But I think it's the old Bill Parcells line. Your record is what it says it is. Is no denying it. The Patriots have deserved to only win 2 games, and they've deserved to lose 4 of them. The offensive line still has problems. The running game is inconsistent. And the defense, whilst it is solid at times, they can be run on. And most importantly, they're not getting takeaways. While they intercepted Zach Wilson 4 times in the first meetup of these 2 teams, they've only had 2 interceptions in their other 5 games. So you can, I don't know, make an argument that the Patriots just love torturing Jets quarterbacks. And it's like, the rack, and putting Harris Stratus on the rack to torture him back in early BC times, effectively. But it's not good enough just to torture Jets quarterbacks. You've got to torture lots more quarterbacks than that. They didn't torture Dak Prescott, who had a field day, and Justin Herbert, I can see already, will have a field day. In between that, do I think the Patriots have enough to beat the Jets? My God, I seriously hope so. But at the same token, they need to start putting wins together. They need to get that first home win of the season. So it's actually a quietly important game for the Pats. I went through the schedule earlier on. I can see a pathway to 9 wins, pushing it. That's not going to be enough to make a wild card. And equally, that's even pushing it, because there's some games on there like the Panthers, like the Jags, etc. You would like to think they'll be competitive in. Random stat of the week, and Brian, you alluded to him a little bit. Jakobi Meyers last week, his touchdown against the Cowboys was called back. One of the reasons the Pats were celebrating so much wasn't just because it was potentially going up 21-7. It actually would have been his first touchdown for the Patriots, first touchdown in his career. He's actually received 100. This is an Elias Sports Bureau stat, I must admit, I stole this from, but he's got 121 receptions. And no receiver ever in the last 40 years has made over 100 receptions without scoring a touchdown. So one to watch out for this weekend. He's thrown a touchdown, did that last season, but he hasn't caught one. Patriots for me, Michael. Please, dear God, in heaven.
Get your money on Morris for a touchdown.
I was watching the United game on Tuesday, Wednesday night against Atalanta. And the thing that strikes me, boys, is obviously United haven't been anywhere near as good as they have been in recent years, but regardless of that, the stature of the team, the stature of the club, every club looks at that like a cup final. It doesn't matter if you're good, if you're bad, if you're really bad. In some cases, like the New York Jets, I think last week in where New England are now, they looked at the Cowboys like a cup final and they got 29 points. Well done. That was a great performance. A great performance from what I can describe as a serviceable quarterback. I've never seen as much commentary about a quarterback as Mac Jones, because you got one side, you got the other side, and you got the middle. I think he's serviceable, and I think it's a really interesting matchup today, because Zach Wilson reminded me in London whenever I was 18 in Queen's Student Union and a traffic light party after 4 or 5 drinks on a Monday night. That's how he played in London. He was throwing stuff everywhere. He was having the crack. He was having a bit of fun. But I'd like to think he's going to use London as a learning experience. The reality is, if the Jets defense can show up, they have a chance in this game. Will they show up? I have no idea. But for the sheer hope of making this week more interesting for me, I'm taking the Jets against the Patriots today. I just want it for the crack. I think Quinton Williams will have a day and get a couple of sacks. And I think Mac Jones will throw 2 or 3 picks. And I think the Jets defense will come up. But I think Zach Wilson will hand it off to guys like Ty Johnson or Michael Carter and win by a field goal in the 4th quarter. I really hope that happens. But, you got to make it interesting, boys. You got to go for it. Is anybody want to shoot me, or what's the crack there?
No, it's not like it's a fair observation to a certain extent, because it's not the Patriots of old. And, they just came back well in that game in London. And I imagine that's the kind of where Salah's gone with it in terms of the angle or the narrative around going to this game, that we came back and we fought as a team. And if we do that in Foxborough in a game which you can go either way, potentially, depending on where it is coming to 4th quarter. No, I don't think it's going to be a blowout. I think the Patriots will have enough experience winning the team they have to win the game. And I'm not sure about the Zach Wilson thing. See, it's all well and good by having a quarterback who's willing to take risks. The reality is, you keep taking risks, you keep throwing interceptions. That's not going to help your team in the long run. I'd rather have a quarterback who's going to be conservative to a certain extent and holds onto the ball and allows other players on the offense to do their magic.
I know for a fact, though, Jets fans, lads, the one fixture they look at when that schedule comes out, when are they playing Foxborough? This is the cup final for them today. It doesn't matter who. Mark, it is. Go on Twitter. They're buzzing for this. They
play the Patriots twice a year.
Yeah, but playing them in Foxborough, they want to get up the Boston. They want to annoy
the first game. They didn't turn up the first game. And look, nobody's going to shoot you. I know you have problems.
That was week 2. They were still gelling. Week 2.
Okay, but I know he's going to shoot you. I know you're a Broncos fan. You have problems with quarterback evaluations. It's okay. It's all right. We understand. We can put you in the 12-step program. You'll be fine. Don't worry.
12 steps is more steps than Teddy Bridgewater's going to take next week against Washington. I think the Jets will get the win. Why not? Let's make it interesting, boys. Talking about trying to make it interesting, the 3-3 Carolina Panthers are going to New Jersey to play the New York Giants 1-5. Colin, who have you got?
I think this is a really tough game to call, because you have both QBs coming off really bad games, unfortunately for them. And I would be less concerned about a rookie throwing interceptions. I think a rookie, it's about them being able to see what plays are there. But it's when you get into year 2, year 3, and you're still throwing those interceptions. And that's what we're seeing with Darnold, and that's what we're seeing with Daniel Jones. Now, Jones was up against the Rams defense last week, but both Darnold and Jones sacked 4 times. Both of them just about in and around the 5 yards per attempt. That's just a recipe for disaster on QB play. The Darnold, I think, is like he's regressed, and he is who we thought he is. For Jones, the issue is Barkley has been out injured, and he's going to be out again today. Golladay is out. Kadarius Toney is out. I think, Brian, am I right that Ingram is questionable, Shepard potentially questionable, and Slayton questionable as well.
Want me to keep going? Do you want me to keep going, Colin?
It sounds a bit like the Browns kind of injury report, but I think that fortunately for the Giants, I think the Panthers are really on the slide. The Panthers started off so hot. They were able to get sacks. They were really impressive. They had 2 really good and speedy edge rushers who were getting to the QB. Last week, not a single sack against Kirk Cousins, who had taken so many of them. That would be a big concern. Whereas the Giants were able to get to Stafford twice. And the Rams have been pretty good about protecting Stafford up to now. So that's why I find it really tough to call. Both Cousins and Stafford put huge numbers on both of these defenses last week. If Saquon was fit, or if the Giants could get a running game going, I'd have them as favorites, because the Panthers do give up a huge number of yards on the ground. I'm torn on this, because I genuinely think this is, for me, has been the toughest game to pick when I've gone through the schedule of this week's games. I'm going to go with the Giants because they're at home, and because I think that if Joe Judge is ever to get a response, this is it, given everything that's gone on. If he doesn't get a response, we'll probably say goodbye to Joe Judge and Dave Gettleman at the end of the season alongside Vic Fangio. But I'm going to say that the Giants go to 2-5, and the Panthers fall below 500.
So this is a game all week I felt that the Giants would win, and as the week's gone on, I've unfortunately had to change my thoughts on it. And I look at the Panthers team. Offensively, they haven't been the same since McCaffrey went out again. You know, obviously he's got injured and it looks like he's gone for the foreseeable. Darnold was very good at the start of the season, but obviously having a running back who can help you, not so much with taking the ball off you at the line of scrimmage, but more so around the dunk pass to him where you can go 20 yards, 30 yards or whatever. And they don't have that in the backups that have come in. And defensively, they were very strong at the start of the season. What's happened to them is because the offense can't move the ball, they're on the field for longer, and they're struggling. Then I look at the Giants, and defensively, we've been in shambles this season. So even if we play well, and there's nobody out injured for this defense, with the exception of Blake Martinez, who's gone for the season. So you'd argue this defense, if it's a defense of all of last year who shows up grand, will stop them. But on offense, Barkley's out, Galladay's out, Toney's out, Ingram is extremely doubtful, Shepard is extremely doubtful. Darius Slayton is extremely doubtful. John Ross, who's come in and had a reasonably good start of his career with the Giants, haven't been out injured, is extremely doubtful. So you're going to have players like Pettis at wide receiver, Johnson at wide receiver, who people don't really know. Kyle Rudolph, who for some reason, who's been brought in as a red zone efficient tight end, can't get the ball because Jason Garrett just won't put him in the playbook. Where are we going to score from?
Brian, is there time for you to get on a plane?
Well, Graham Gano might step in. Graham Gano might step in and wide receiver and might give me a chance to be the kicker for the Giants on Sunday, but he's out for the blood of the Panthers, because he's come out with a statement today saying that if he hadn't got out of Carolina, his career would be over by now, because he did everything to finish his career off, because they didn't evaluate his injuries properly, which I thought was a real wild statement. So maybe Giants will win on Sunday and Graham Gano will kick the winner, and you'll be back on our show next week with us celebrating having been on with us during the summer. Can't say it for me. Giants won't win on Sunday. And, you know, I touched on it on Monday show around whether Judge will be there in the long run. The reason why I don't think he'll be there is because there has to get to a stage where you got to let the coach go and you got to let the GM go. And what we find in the league is not just with the Giants, you touched on it with the Broncos. Like Fangio isn't Peyton's guy. Joe Judge is Dave Gettleman's guy. But if you bring in a new GM, it's a mix and match situation. I think you're better off cleaning house. So if they lose on Sunday, do you know who we play next week? The Chiefs. The week after that, the Raiders. The week after that, the Bucks. So Michael's delighted because Michael loves nothing better than seeing the Giants lose, but unfortunately, the Giants.
I need the Giants to win this week, and I'll talk about that in a minute. I need the Giants to win the next 4 weeks as it stands because my team needs to bomb now.
Well, they won't be winning. They won't be winning on Sunday. God, I'd love to see us win. But the reality is, looking at all those injuries, if we had all those players back, we'd win the game, in my opinion. But no, we won't win.
Okay, so a couple of things. One, actually, on the last game, I should have given Colin credit for the little Rudyard Kipling line he slipped in about if, which was beautiful. And all that you needed to know about this game was the second that Michael McQuaid started talking about it is Brian O'Leary subconsciously reached for the beer beside him and started taking a drink out of the glass. William Butler Yeats saying the worst thing about some men when they are not drunk is that they are sober. And unfortunately, Brian has had to look at his team in a sober light and realize that with the injuries, they just don't have a lot of good things going for them. They're giving up 4.5 yards per carry against the run. And yes, Chuba Hubbard is not Christian McCaffrey, but he can run downhill and offers a decent and consistent running game for them. Hassan Reddick and Brian Burns on the edge of the Panthers defense. Quite right, Colin, they were held last week, but I don't expect them to be held this week against Nate Solder, who has been underperforming this season, and Matt Pert, who, yeah, exactly, because he's stepping in for his first start as a Giant at the tackle position, or expected to at the time of recording. So that is going to be an issue for them and a real risk for them. And so far, what I've seen from the Panthers on defense is quite simple. They are dominating against bad offenses, but they are unable to stop good offenses. And unfortunately, and Brian, you know I love you, but with Barkley gone, with Tony gone, with the injuries you've got, and maybe even without the injuries you've got, I don't think that the Giants will classify as a good offense. That being said, Panthers, don't do anything too stupid. Run the ball with Hubbard. Get after the Giants on defense. And for the love of God, ask Sam Darnold and give him plenty of time and ask him to do reasonably little. Don't put the game necessarily in his hands. And you should be able to navigate this game. For me, it's the Panthers on this one all the way.
Sorry, Mike, I just want to make a point. Just bear in mind as well, Sam Darnold is going back into MetLife, and whilst it's not against the Jets, he still wants to make a point to the New York media that he feels he's a good enough quarterback. So maybe that will go a different way. Maybe he'll be overthinking this game. And Reddick, who's playing with the Panthers now, 7 sacks last year, record for the Cardinals. 7 sacks in one game against the Giants last year.
It's a stadium reunion, Brian. We're going to get some big reunions in a bit. It's a stadium reunion at least.
Back in New Jersey in the Meadowlands. Darnold, first half against the Vikings last week, a 28% completion percentage, 17.8 passer rating. Maybe he wants to get his bag and head over to DIA, boys. Sounds like he knows where he's going there. I don't think the talk about Joe Judge is even relevant. He won't be there after week 17. He might not even get to week 17 as it stands. I don't think the Darnold situation is an issue. I think Chuba Hubbard is going to be more than serviceable enough against this Giants defense. And I have the Panthers winning this game. I wouldn't say comfortably, but I think they'll win it by maybe 10 or 12 points. It'd be nice to see Daniel Jones get a touchdown this week. I mean, Jesus, lads, come on. I feel like I need to throw him a bone or buy him a lucky bag or something. I'm getting annoyed even watching it. But again, I would like the Giants to win this game because it looks as if the team that I support will not win any more than 4 games this season. So if you could win a game today, Giants, please do. But the Panthers are going to move on to 4-3. And if they can get out of this situation when CNC comes back in and have maybe 4 or 5 wins, and also let Darnold have a bad week, boys. He's entitled to having a couple of bad weeks. We all have bad weeks sometimes.
Is that 3 in a row there, Michael? That's the problem.
Well, wait until it's 4. I said to the Broncos, I'll give you another
week.
I hope
it's 4 this evening. And Giants defense somehow comes back to the Giants defense that, as I just on here in the show, that we expected to see this season, not to be so far.
Well, if the Giants were to lose today, they would go obviously 1-6. Brian, very quickly, is it time to shut up shop and sell the farm? Or
I would imagine I would call out Jabril Peppers as someone who will be gone within the next fortnight, because this season he's been very underwhelming in his performances, and strangely enough, as someone called out on one of the media things today, he'll get traded before the deadline. And so would Odell Beckham. And they were the 2 guys that were a part of the trade a couple of years back when Beckham went to the Giants, and obviously Peppers came back over to the Giants from the Browns. So he'll be gone. And Evan Ingram, potentially, I'd say he'll be gone.
Sell the farm. Talking about actual proper football, let's get to the proper football, gentlemen. The Titans going up against the Chiefs. That's in Tennessee. Colin, Chiefs 3-3. Still in that position in the AFC West. Titans 4-2. An intriguing game because it really is now, after the struggles the Chiefs have had over the last few weeks. They have to perform today in Tennessee, don't they, to shut people up?
Well, just for their own sake, you want to be the number one seed if you're serious about making a deep run. It makes an enormous difference. The 2015 Broncos, might not have won Super Bowl 50 if we'd had to go to Foxborough in the playoffs rather than the Patriots having to come to Mile High and face the noise. So for the Chiefs, it is a big game. It's a big game for both of these sides. The Titans obviously flying high on the victory over the Bills, an emotional win given like the stop that they came up with. I still don't understand the decision on the Bills to go for the QB sneak given the time left. It didn't make sense to me because they were never going to get the touchdown. They were going to get a first down, and they were going to have to call a timeout. And they were probably it was a strange one. But the Titans got the win. Looks like the Titans are going to have some of their, Julio's back, AJ's back, Derrick Henry's there, and Ryan Tannehill. And to me, they're built more on the individuals than on the system. The Chiefs can't stop the run, right? They're awful against the run. They have been for a number of years, and they're going up against King Henry, league leader in rushing, league leader in touchdowns, going for his fourth straight game, looking for 125 yards and a rushing touchdown. But if you were to have hope as a Chiefs fan, in week 4, Derrick Henry went for 157, scored a touchdown, and the Titans still lost to the Jets. So this Titans side, we talked about the issues that the Jets have. Now, the Jets were able to get to Tannehill time and time again. The Chiefs have really struggled with sacks. Lindsay Jones talked about with us on Thursday night. The Frank Clark trade hasn't worked out. Moving Chris Jones to the outside makes no sense. They have to move him back inside, let him do his thing. Getting that pressure up the middle will help and figure out the pass rush. I just think that I know, again, Mahomes is trying to do too much, but he got it together at the end. Kelsey and Hill have both missed time this week, but they are both back for today's game. The Chiefs have made changes. The fact that they dropped Dirty Dan, I think, is telling. It means that they're serious about it. And Honey Badger is the emotional heartbeat of this team, and he brought them together. I just think the Chiefs find a way. I wouldn't be surprised at all if the Titans were to win it, given they have such incredible individual talent, and they can beat you in the air, they can beat you on the ground. But Andy Reid, Patrick Mahomes, with their back against the wall going into Music City, I think that they will move to 4-3, and I think both teams will be 4-3 at the end of today.
Mark made a really good point in the last game when he referred to the Panthers defense as they're going to be really strong against the poor teams, and then when they get played against the better teams, they get exposed. And I look at the Chiefs in many ways like that. They'll beat all the average teams in the league right now because where they are in terms of how they're playing. But if you look at the defeats, they've lost to the Chargers, who are top of the division. They've lost to Baltimore, who are top of the division, and they've lost to Buffalo, who are top of the division. And now they're going up against a team that are top of the division in the AFC South, in the Titans. Derrick Henry, 783 yards this season. That's more than 26 teams in the league combined. I don't see, bearing in mind how poor this defense has played, how they can stop him in this game this evening. And I look down at the players on offense for the Chiefs, because it probably will end up being a high-scoring game. Who's going to be the player there that steps out and does it? Will it be Hill, who's been, by and large, kind of kept in, reasonable yards compared to previous seasons, and Kelsey? And Kelsey has a very poor record against this Titans team. 75 yards or less in 5 games in a row. He just doesn't seem to play well. I know a couple of years ago they beat them in the playoffs, but he didn't really have a fantastic game. And this interception thing hasn't gone away from Mahomes. He had a really shocking interception in the first half last week in Washington. I don't know if you saw Andy Reid's reaction to that particular interception. It was like, oh my God, what are you doing? And people were saying, oh, it was comfortable in the end. It was comfortable in the end because Washington football team defensively are so poor. That first half was abysmal from the Chiefs last week. I thought we would have seen a reaction out of them last week to go and really put a marker down. It wasn't a bait. He won by double digits in terms in the end, but it wasn't a fantastic performance. I'm going to stick with the Titans. I'm popular in Cork at the moment. There's 3 points on offer. So I'd imagine there'll be a free Zambucas on top of this one if they win. So yeah, for me, Derrick Henry's going to have a day and the Titans are going to win. He's going to go for more than 40 yards.
I think I might be torturing Michael for a while with that one. The Chiefs, for the bettors out there, are 4-13 against the spread in their last 17 games. For all the talk of their explosive offense, they haven't necessarily lived up to what the bookmakers might have set lines at in the last while. But for all the lambasting of Mahomes, I do agree. I mean, he's thrown more interceptions now than he did in either of his last 2 seasons. He has also got the most passing touchdowns in the league currently this season. They are also getting Chris Jones back on defense, which I think is a huge upgrade and is key, obviously, after missing the last game. And it's remarkable, really, in a game that's going to involve Julio, A.J. Brown, Tyreek Hill, Travis Kelce, all these amazing receiving threats, and in the 2021 NFL, the one player we quite rightly can't stop talking about as being the influencing point on this is Derrick Henry. I mean, what was the old Sherlock Holmes line? So when you've eliminated the impossible, however improbable it is, whatever remains must be the truth. The reality is this boils down to Derrick Henry versus the Chiefs' run defense, non-existent as it has been, and who will win that will hold the key to the game. And you don't have to be Sherlock Holmes, really, to figure that out. I do think you're being a little overly kind, however, to the Titans defense. I keep reiterating, as Josh Allen proved last week, and as every team that's played them proved last week, they do not have a secondary. Which somebody mentioned abomination earlier on. They are an abomination in their passing defense. And my God, you don't want to have a bad pass defense against this Chiefs team. So really, let's say it this way. Whose defense is going to be less bad might be the deciding factor of this. Can you stop Hill and Kelce, or can you stop Derrick Henry? And whoever makes the best attempt at that, because I don't think either will be successful, I just think it'll be an attempt, will be successful, will win this game. For me, bet the over. There's going to be points to beat the band. And equally, I will not give up on Patty Mahomes just yet. So for me, I think the Chiefs will have enough to win this game.
29, 36, 30, 30, 38, and 13. That is not the Eurovision. It's not the bingo hall. That's the amount of points the Chiefs have conceded over the first 6 weeks. Again, I think it's embarrassing in some cases because of the talent they have on the roster. And I'm going to take the Titans to win today. I am never doubting Derrick Henry again. In fact, I'm taking Derrick Henry for 3 touchdowns today. And I'm taking the Titans for over 40 points today. I think Mahomes will go for about 350, 400 yards, but they'll score 34 points and the Titans will score 42, 40 or so. And I think, again, lads, we need to get into a discussion on Monday Night Live at 10 o'clock. If the Titans do win this game by a high scoreline and score a lot of points, we need to have a serious discussion about the Chiefs 7 weeks in if that does happen. But again, yeah, I'm taking the Chiefs today. Any comments on that?
Sorry, are you taking the Chiefs?
I was the Titans, taking the Titans. I'm taking the Titans. Taking the Titans.
I would say this is probably, I think we'll all agree, this is probably the best game of the weekend. You know, I know we're going to come to the 9 o'clock slate, and
I like the Bengals game, man.
It's between that and the Bengals Ravens for me. Yeah, they're the only two I looked at and went, that could, that's a game between 2 good teams. I think we've got games between 2 bad teams.
The next one is as well, Mark. The next one is as well.
What's that?
We've got the 0-6 Detroit Lions against the 5-1 Los Angeles Rams. Right.
We rightly criticize the Washington football team, right, for their disgraceful treatment of the memory of Sean Taylor, and what they did, and utilizing that as a distractionary tool at such short notice, disrespecting the man's memory, disrespecting his family, and disrespecting the fan base. The Lions did it right. They won the internet this week. Chris Spielman found out that he was being inducted into the Pride of the Lions Ring of Honor in a really beautiful way, where he thought he was announcing somebody, and it turned out he was announcing himself. And for a franchise that have been kind of so down and so short of good news stories, it was good to see kind of the entirety of the league kind of just come together and celebrate it and share memories of him as a player. I saw, much like we talk about the 32 teams and seeing all the jerseys in London, I saw fans of all 32 teams kind of celebrate that for the Lions, and that was really good to see. And it's good that the Lions had that, because the game is going to be horrific. I mean, poor Jared Goff, right? You have to go back into the former family home. The divorce is like the ink has barely dried. Sean McVay is publicly swooning over Stafford this week, saying he's even better than I thought he would be. And he's able to take plays I give him, and he doesn't just listen to me. He devises his own concepts. Talk about subtle things. You also have the fact that Dan Campbell, super positive Dan, threw Goff under the bus. Took what, 6 seconds, was that the count, to actually come out with it at the press conference, but said, look, things are bad. I recognize this is not a good situation, but Jared's got to step up here. So nightmare week for Jared Goff, all things considered, but not a particularly surprising one, because I just don't think he has it. He also has to contend with the fact that Aaron Donald is going to be headhunting him. He's been sacked 15 times already this season. It's going to be, I just don't see any way for the poor Lions that they can win this one. Stafford gets to throw on one of the worst defenses in the league. They've been awful against the pass. Cooper Kupp, Robert Woods. It's the Rams all day long.
I'm going to bring you back. I love Colin. He loves saying these little ones. So I'm going to bring you back to December 19th. Last year, we were in the Woolshed. The Rams were playing at home to the Jets. The Rams were minus 17.5 points going into that game. So Jared Goff was involved in the shock of the year last year, for the wrong reasons, because the Jets went in and punched him in the mouth and won that game. The handicap on Sunday is 17.5 points. He's getting 17.5. He's going in. He's got a point to prove. Yeah, McVay is obviously going to rub it in all week, but you know what? I've been turned off by that guy the longer I have to listen to him, And then I look at the game and I look at the stats and Matthew Stafford has a higher passer rating after 2 months in with that team than Goff had in his entire 4 years with the team, which is quite concerning. And then I saw Aaron Donald. I looked at him. When has he played best in his career? Consistently, his best games of his career have all been against the same team, the Detroit Lions. Henderson has 5 touchdowns this year, and the Lions are one of the weakest teams in the league against the run. So they could get exploited everywhere. But for some strange reason, I don't see it. I'm going to go with the Rams by 14 as opposed to 17.5, so they won't cover. Because what will happen is the game will be gone by the 4th quarter, Stafford will be out, and Goff will drive down the field and get a little punch hole touchdown. And backdoor covers, they like to say, bit of backdoor action late on a Sunday night. Rams will win, but it won't be blowout like everybody seems.
Yeah, depending on proposal A or proposal B, Mark, pre-recorded show. You wouldn't think it's pre-recorded because Mark has got a lovely, clear background behind him. Good morning, Mark.
Good morning, Michael. It's lovely at 9 o'clock. It's just very dark in Dublin at 9 o'clock in the morning.
Mark has the milk tray. He's got to do a milk tray ad later on.
That's it.
You're with me on that, Mark, yeah?
I'm with you. I'm just thinking Michael doesn't know what the milk tray ad is about.
Oh, for God's sake, come on.
I know what milk tray is, but I don't know what. Look. Are you picking the Rams? Quick, come on.
You mentioned proposal A or proposal B. Actually, if you go in a structure ABBA like ABBA, It's also known as a chiastic structure or a ring structure in literature, where there is a circular motion to the propositions and the logic that's being applied. This, to my reckoning, is the first time in NFL history that two veteran quarterbacks will face off against their former team in the same game.
You dare say it.
They used to play for the team the year before. So we've got Stafford and we've got, both of the Goff as well, playing against their former team. The way in which that trade went down, I don't know, Michael, you probably saw the interviews that were being carried out earlier this week by ESPN, and they're interviewing Robert Woods and Taylor and Higbee and Cooper Kupp, and like, what was your reactions? And they were all going, I couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe it was real. None of them were saying, my God, oh, Jesus Christ, we got rid of Jared. What the hell are we doing? They were all just like, oh, I couldn't believe it. But it was almost like the unwritten thing was, couldn't believe we got rid of that lad and we got Matthew Stafford in. They were more professional than I'm being, but that was kind of the underlying concept. It has worked miraculously well for the Rams. Obviously, the Lions continue down a bit of a downward spiral. When were they out of downward spiral might be the right question to ask. And frankly speaking, like the guys, it is a reunion to beat all reunions, but there is only one outcome to this game. I mean, seriously, David had better odds against Goliath than the Lions this weekend.
Yeah, let's put it this: we won't be putting the Rams in our weekly matchbook bet because there's absolutely no point. I think it's 1 to 12.
Well, don't be so sure.
Oh, wait, Michael's going to pick Lions. Wait, hold
on. Mark was talking about Abba there, talking about Stafford and the Rams and Jared Goff. Knowing me, knowing you. No, you're not going to. If you had a crisp €20 note like Conor McGregor's dad had at the Dart a couple of years ago, and you put it on the Rams, or sorry, if you put it on the Lions, it's the equivalent of getting the crisp €20 note and getting a lighter and just watching it burn away. There is more chance of me becoming Taoiseach or Uachtaráin or the First Minister or the leader of the DUP or Sinn Féin, Diverse Society, etc., than there is of the Lions winning this game. They have not got a chance in hell unless the Rams team all literally collapse on the field. Even if that does happen, the game will be called off. There's no chance. And we're going to move on very quickly.
Michael, I don't want anybody to be having to rehash and go back and looking at old episodes, because like we've done so many now. We touched on the 56 off season, never mind the ones we did last season. But if you are to go back and take time out to scroll and find that episode in which we done in the Woodshed on the December 19th last year,
I know
we all said the same thing. No chance. Jets, not a hope. And the Jets went in and completely derailed their opportunity to take Lawrence, and who knows? Dan Campbell's coming off a really difficult defeat last weekend. He is going to be all over those players this week to certainly perform. And you just never know.
Brian, that's what I said last week, and they didn't turn up. So why do we imagine?
But this is like, Mark, this is supposed to be like, they're going against a team that arguably is like going to go to the Super Bowl, certainly be in the playoffs, championship game. The Bengals, okay, look like they're going in the right direction, but you could argue, you could come up with valid reasons as to why the Lions could win that last week. You can't for this game. But sometimes, I'm trying to big it up.
Chance of Carlo winning the All-Ireland, Brian.
There's plenty of Lions fans in Ireland and the UK, and, I would like to see them get off the snide and win a game.
I would love to see the Lions win today. I just don't think it's going to happen. Yeah. 4-2 Raiders, 2-4 Eagles. The game is in Vegas, as Bruce Buffer says. It's time, Colin. It's time for the main event. Well, not really, but who have you got?
The Raiders came back to life last week, and they were obviously very impressive, particularly for their 3 quarters, until you realize that they were up against that Broncos defense, and we saw that on Thursday night. I think that the Eagles actually will match up quite well to the Raiders. And Lane Johnson, I think, is going to be back for this game, which is a huge boost for the Eagles. The Eagles don't tend to give up big plays, and the Raiders have certainly capitalized on a number of those, utilizing Ruggs' speed. So that would be an interesting one to see. The Eagles did get burned by Tyreek Hill a number of times. So can the Raiders utilize Ruggs in similar ways? I don't understand the way in which the Eagles are utilizing Sanders. It seems very, very strange. The Max Crosby had himself a day against Teddy Bridgewater, and Jalen Hurts has been sacked two or more times in each of the last 5 games. I still think the Eagles will hang around in this, and I think that they could get the win, because I think there'll be a huge emotional kind of there was a lot of emotion involved for the Raiders last week, divisional game. I expect the Raiders to win, and I'll go with them, but I think it'll be a much tougher game than it was in the division against the Broncos last week.
Colin, you touched on Max Crosby, 33 rushes on the quarterbacks this season. He's got the highest amount throughout the whole league. It just goes to show the player that he is, having not been selected in the first round, is a really stellar player from. And this offense, with the exception of that game against the Bears, and I'm going to put it down to the fact of all the spec and all the stuff that went on with Gruden that week, because we picked them against the Bears when we were over in London the weekend of the Falcons game, and it just never really showed up, and they were quite poor. But then you look at their offense, and 300 plus yards for 4 players: Ruggs, Waller, Renfro, Edwards. No other team in the league has done that. And right now, Carr's on pace for a 5,500 yard season, which would be an NFL setting record. That's not to say he can do it, but the way he's playing, he's had a great start to the season. And this Eagles team, I can't figure them out. You know, offensively, yeah, they play well, but defensively, I'm still very concerned about them. I see this game, the Mark touched on earlier, points galore. This is the kind of game I see points galore. I think this could go over to 48.5 points on the total. But for me, I think the Raiders are trending in the right direction. Last Saturday in London, when we were discussing the Broncos-Raiders game, I made the point was I picked the Broncos. I said, if the Raiders were to get out of Mile High with a win and potentially win this game on Sunday against the Eagles, they're sitting at 5-2 in a division where everybody's talking about the Chargers and potentially how inconsistent the Chiefs are. They're going quietly about their business, whilst they still have all that head coach stuff going on. So for me, I think the Raiders will win. I don't think it'll be easy, like you say, Colin. I think it could go into the 4, but I think the Raiders will do enough in the end.
Yeah, if you're an Eagles fan, this must be such a frustrating season of such a frustrating team. I think they've played thus far extremely sloppily at times. There have been games where they're passing up the opportunity to get into a game and to potentially take over. It seems at times they don't know what their true identity is. As I said, at one point, it was like they might try to recreate Baltimore North with various running options, including Sanders and Jalen Hurts potentially on read options, and moved away from that. And, now they've traded away Zach Ertz, which I understand because you're not going to be able to pay him and Goddard. But at the same token, it feels like somewhat of a defeatist move. Now you're in a phase where it almost feels like the management doesn't feel that they will get to either playoffs or make much of this season. You're praying that Carson Wentz continues to start for Indianapolis and gives you a higher draft pick. And you're still questioning, isn't it funny how, the universe is going to intrinsically link Tua and Jalen Hurts for so long. And both of them still are not fully trusted or believed to be the messiah and the solid answer by their fan base. Jalen Hurts in particular, to me, every time I see him play, it's kind of a case of, yeah, he can do some things really well. He's definitely an athlete. But fundamentally, can he throw the ball downfield? Can he stretch the defense? Can he be that leader who is going to operate sufficiently in the NFL? And I'm not sure still he can be there. Michael giving us an ABBA song reference there earlier on. So when it comes my attention to the Raiders, I'll give you another one. I Have a Dream, which was a lovely ABBA song, also featured in Mamma Mia. But I'm going to use it more in the context of the Martin Luther King context. I have a dream that the Raiders didn't just band together for 1 week, that this is going to unite them this season. I have a dream that the Raiders are going to take the momentum from that game, overcome the loss, rightfully so, of that head coach. And those 53 men and their associated coaches will continue to strive to reach the goals of this season. I have a dream that they will take one of those wild card slots, probably behind the Chiefs still, but maybe behind the Chargers. And in fact, Michael, there's the possibility that all those three teams could make the playoffs from the AFC West. And I have a dream that this Sunday, the Las Vegas Raiders continue on this streak and beat the Philadelphia Eagles, even though, and we haven't said this, the Philadelphia Eagles are coming off a bye and have rested for 10 days at this stage.
Well, the Raiders had a bye last week. So, I mean, let's call it as it is. I mean, the Raiders didn't have a game last week. They done well done to them. In the circumstances, what happened with Gruden, etc., to go in and score 34 points. But again, they were playing a team that lost on Thursday night to a second-string Cleveland Browns team. So let's not even start that conversation, boys. You're talking about ABBA songs. Take a chance on me. The Eagles have one of the worst defenses, boys, in the NFL. After through 6 weeks, in terms of third down, it's statistically one of the worst. They're giving up conversions of 46.2% of the plays. And stats, Michael, do you like it? I think if they can improve, they have a chance. If they can stop both the run for the Raiders and also plays the guys like Darren Waller today, they have a chance. I'm going to take a chance on the Eagles for the shock today, and I'm going to take them going to 3-4. I just like Miles Sanders, and I like the Eagles. If you haven't seen as well, boys, there is literally like 7,000 or 8,000 people flying over from Philly for this weekend. It's the most expensive ticket on the secondary markets this Sunday. And I'm just looking forward to watch the game. I mean, there's not a lot of action in the late window. This will be probably the best game.
You can totally understand where they're going, Michael, can't you? Like, in fairness, a few nights away in Vegas. I'd love to see, and I'm not saying this to wind you boys up, but, I would love to see the Raiders in the Super Bowl.
It will probably happen eventually. Like, at the end of the day, they've got all the... And this is why the Gruden thing, I think, is so, I guess, disappointing for a neutral NFL fan or for a Raiders fan, because he's messed it up for himself. They literally now have the turf, they have the history, the stadium, but it's not going to matter today. The Eagles are going to win.
Wait, sometimes, sorry, Mark, Avram Grant, right? Chelsea.
Jesus Christ.
No, I'm just saying, teams have managers, and they're like the spectacular manager, and they're the snazzy manager, and they're the right manager. And then someone else comes in, and he's not the fashionable name, and he ends up doing such a good job. Roberto Di Matteo won the Champions League for Chelsea. I know they've been back there since then and won it there last May. But he came in and won them. You don't necessarily need the big guy. You need the right guy.
Zidane won 3 of them with Real Madrid, and he's probably not the greatest manager. But yeah, I mean, you said about the Raiders being in the Super Bowl, Brian. Maybe, like, we keep talking about it, but maybe the pure LA Bowl, the Rams and the Chargers in the Super Bowl. I mean, that could work, guys. I mean, if the Chiefs don't make it, and I am trying to rub it in now, but still, maybe there are options you could consider.
But I do genuinely think the Eagles offense has a chance though today, boys. I think Jalen Hurts, boys, is not as bad as some people have reckoned he is.
Welcome aboard the Jalen Hurts train, Michael. Delighted to welcome you. Been on that for quite a while, and not a surprise to me that Philly fans are traveling in numbers. Some of the most raucous and devoted fans in the NFL.
Jalen Hurts train is approaching a rickety bridge over a river that's broken and is incomplete.
Dear God, give me a man.
An LA Super Bowl with us doing the press show on the LA rooftop of the 27th of March 1987. U2. It's happening. Where the streets have no name.
That sounds like a road up Newry or something, towards Newry and Dundalk. Cardinals 6-0, Texans 1-5.
Intriguing game.
Reunion alert! Reunion alert!
Right, come on, let's go. 2-minute warning.
Yeah, definitely the reunion klaxon can sound. For this one, like Davis Mills, who had an amazing game against the Patriots and just absolutely MIA last week, just may as well not have been present on the field in any way, shape or form. If we're going to go with football references, Romario often says there was no point in him being on the field when AC Milan put a beat down on that Barcelona team famously. Davis Mills last week shouldn't have been there. For him, the Cards get sacked. It's going to be a long day. It's audition time for the Texans. Realistically, we're coming up to the trade deadline. They're going to be teams that are in need of a wide receiver. They're going to be in need of others. Brandon Cooks may well get a shot to go to the Super Bowl, but it won't be with the Texans. The Cards are going to 7-0. JJ has been phenomenal for them, great leadership, and D-Hop is a pleasure to watch.
D-Hop and JJ going up against their old teams, and there's been very little discussed, spoke about it in the media. I'm sure there is in Arizona and Houston, but by and large throughout the NFL stuff today, very little said. And that's a reflection of the game that we're looking at, because that team in Houston is so far removed from the great sides who made the playoffs, but unfortunately never really got anywhere with the, I suppose you could argue they should have beaten the Chiefs a couple of years ago in the playoffs, but this Cards team are putting them over 32 points a game, over 400 yards, in terms of offense. But yet, of all the 4 teams that have done that in the last 10 years, none of them have made the Super Bowl. That's kind of the way I see it with this Cards team. I think at some stage they'll come unstuck. They brought in Zach Ertz and experienced players, won a Super Bowl, as Mark knows well, against his Patriots. And it's a bit of a strange one in a way, I think, because 11% of their plays on offense has been geared towards tight ends. And maybe that's because they're not calling plays to tight ends because they're not happy with what they got, and they see Ertz as an upgrade. So I'm not entirely sure he's going to be the difference maker in the long run, but it's a good move for him. I'm not even going to try and beat this game up, Michael. I'm not going to do a lines on it. This really is a blowout.
Is it like live against Dublin in the Champo, Brand?
No, because I've seen Dublin play against teams where they've been minus 12 points and only won by 4 or 5 because they take their foot off the gas. The way the Cards are playing offensively, I'd say they'd want to, and the way there's certain players in that team that would want to put a beat down on this Texans team. And more so, not so much against the players or the coaches there, but more so with people in the front office to say, look what we can do on you. And if only you had a build around us when we had a great side in Houston. Mm-hmm. Over to you, Mark, sorry.
You're going Cards then, we take it, Brian.
Absolute blowout. I'd say, I'd say 20-point win.
Look, I know, we get a bit of a push from time. Like, let's be honest, there's a few bad teams in the NFL at the moment. Like, the Jets are a bad team. People go, oh, you can't pick them. It's like, look, there's a lot of young guys there. There's a lot of, over half the roster's first and second year, and they're trying their best. But frankly, it's a bit like Tom Hanks' line in A League of Their Own. There's no crying in baseball. There's no participation trophies in the NFL. You've either a good team and you win the game, or you lose the game. It's that simple. The Lions, we've lamented the fact they've lost a couple of heartbreaking field goal kicks, but their record is what their record is, and they still have not performed sufficiently as a team. The Texans from day one have actually performed better for David Culley than we probably anticipated, and despite maybe Column's virulent objections to their capability, they have shown up, but they have shown up in a couple of key individual performances, and they just don't have the sufficient talent base. Colin rightly points out this is an audition. Yeah, it's an audition to potentially go and play for the Cards because they've had a great run of picking up Texans at a later stage. So they'll be looking and saying, well, that guy's pretty good. Let's try and get him. Look, it's the Cards who are going to win this. But my big lookout is, I was only thinking this the other day, it's a long time since we've seen the J.J. Watt tight end package. So, Brian, you're right. They don't use the tight end very much. And Zach Ertz, I think, is a useful pickup to help diversify that offense and give them another weapon even more. But what about if we see this weekend back in Houston, line up Ertz, line up J.J. Watt, and give J.J. the ball and let him score a touchdown? Never know. I'm going Cards, Michael.
I want to just give a shout out to Kevin O'Brien, who is an Irish cricketer, big fan of the show, follows us on Twitter. Kevin, this is going to be a cricket scoreline, mate. So hard luck in the T20 World Cup this week for Ireland, but you'll find a more familiar scoreline here this week. I think at this point,
Michael, Kevin O'Brien isn't just an Irish cricketer. He's the Irish cricketer who scored 100 against England to beat them back in the World Cup way back when, which was an amazing performance.
Yeah, that was a good day. Well, look, take it easy. Better slow down. There's no way to go. Does your mother know? I think they'll be singing that at the end of the game to the Texans because the Cardinals are going to be gone by the end of the first quarter, and I'm going to leave it at that. And yeah, let's see what JJ does. Let's very swiftly move on, because we have a big game now. We've got the Super Bowl champions 5-1 Tampa Bay Buccaneers, Colin, going up against Justin Fields and those Chicago Bears, flee after 6 weeks.
Yeah, well, had Matt Nagy actually gone with Fields from the off, he might be in something of a better position. Going into Tampa, when Brady is clearly on a mission and has got everybody on board, and Bruce Arians is on a mission too. But I think Bruce, like, you saw what he was again this week. Look, he's a brilliant coach, but also the fact that he bigs up his assistant coaches, he's looking for them to get jobs. He was talking about Byron Leftwich, said Byron calls all the plays, I just oversee things. The Bears, the best thing that the Bears have has been their pass rush, right? They're number one in terms of getting to the QB. Problem is, the Bucs have only given up nine sacks in 6 games. The Eagles had some success actually running the ball, but that's because I think Hurts is so elusive. I don't think Fields has that same ability. And the Bucs they have a bevy of weapons. Like we had Seth Walder on from ESPN. He did a great piece around underachievers and overachievers, wide receivers. Mike Evans is underachieving technically if you look at him as an individual. But I'd say if you talk to Mike Evans and you said, would you take, what you're receiving and being 5-1 and being favorites for the Super Bowl? I'd say he would. They're all on board. The Bucs are going to 6-1. The Bears will have better days, but I don't think they'll have enough to go into Tampa and get a win.
It's been a steep learning curve for Justin Fields, and in particular, when he's blitzed, he's all over the shop. He's only completed 29% of his throws because he's struggling, and he's played against some reasonably good defenses. And for some reason, the Bucs have gone very blitz heavy. Maybe it's because the secondary, to a large extent, is exposed because there's so many players out. I can see them going for them all day long, and it's very difficult to put up a case as to why the Bears will win. There's Jimmy Graham is now out of the game as well, who's kind of a security blanket for him in difficult spots, judging by what we've seen so far. And Colin's favourite player, he'd love to have him in Denver for free to Chicago, and Allen Robinson still hasn't had a game over 70 yards.
I wouldn't like him in Denver because we don't have a quarterback. I want Allen Robinson to get a quarterback who allow him to go down the field, because that's where he's brilliant. The Bears have him running curl routes.
Well, Fields can put it down the field. In fairness, what we saw in the preseason is very different, but he can put it down there. He can nail it. The offense that's been called from is reasonably conservative. Look, it's difficult to put up an argument as to how the Bears are going to win this game. The Bucs, for me, will win comfortably.
This is a rematch from last season. Bears won last season. Tom Brady forgot how many downs there were. That dementia seems to have cleared, and obviously pulled it together later in the season. But there are aspects which are legitimate areas where the Bears could exploit. The Bucs haven't actually gone up against a good defense this year. The only top 10 defense they went up against was the Pats. They were held to 19. You can say that was because of the emotion and other factors, and Brady did seem a bit off his game. But other than that, they've played against pretty bad defenses. Obviously, they've been a contributing factor to them being bad defenses. But equally this week, we already know Gronk is out. Antonio Brown is out. So there's a couple of security blankets for Brady. And of course, the age-old thing, if you get pass pressure on him, if you get the pass rush up, if you put pressure on the interior, which Akeem Hicks is very much capable of doing, that you can put him off his game. And, I was very critical of Justin Fields in his first game with the minus, 1 yard effectively when he took away the adjusted sacks. He's certainly shown the talent he's got there. Tom Brady is not a plantation owner like Aaron Rodgers. He is not claiming to own anyone, not even the Buffalo Bills, which he probably has a better claim to than Rodgers has over the Bears. And I do think it's going to be a lot tighter than you're making out, because I think the Bears defense is for real and will keep it competitive. But a bit like the Packers-Bears game last week, when push comes to shove, the greater offensive talent is on the Bucks, and they will have enough to eke it out and win the game.
Yeah, look, I actually forgot that Chicago beat the Bucks last year, beat the Super Bowl champions. There really was something in the air that night. The stars were bright. Chicago.
Fernando. Sorry.
You're killing me here, man. Look, it doesn't really matter if Brady has got me and Colin lining up. Let's be honest, like, it doesn't matter. He'll still find a way to throw it to me some way. Scotty Miller, is Mike Evans playing? Let's be honest. He'll find a fourth string running back and get him in. Props to me who picked the Browns running back on Thursday night. They brought him in.
I picked him up in the fantasy, Michael.
One thing just to highlight. Yeah, okay, Antonio Brown is out, as is Rob Gronkowski. But Michael, it's not you and me. It is Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, Tyler Johnson, Cameron Braid.
Howard as well, yeah.
Ronald Jones,
and yeah, like, we've gone from playoff Lenny to every season Lenny.
And
a man for all seasons.
And they're playing a guy that's a rookie quarterback in Justin Fields going into Tampa Bay. Let's see what Justin can do. For me, 14-ish point win for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Brady, 3 passing touchdowns, 1 rushing touchdown. And the Bears struggle in Tampa Bay for me.
Michael, if they're playing in Tampa Bay, wasn't Seasons in the Sun an ABBA song? Wasn't it? We had joy, we had fun, we had seasons in the sun. Wouldn't that have worked? No? Okay. Anyway,
that means on. Like that's
great song. Not the same was, but I don't think it was the ABBA. I think
Justin Fields.
Yeah, I think they did a rehash. I think they did a rehash of it, Mark.
Was it Justin Fields who sang it? Sorry. Okay.
If you're a Colts or 49ers fan in Ireland or in the UK, you'll be singing for "Gimme, Gimme, Gimme" a win after midnight on Sunday Night Football. But we'll do that in a minute. Obviously delighted to have the Irish NFL Show presented by Trust Gaming, but also Matchbook Betting Exchange. You can use code Irish NFL Show for a bonus this weekend and check out the offer on screen now. 18 plus. Please gamble aware. Please only spend what you can afford. Brian, the man in terms of spending what he can afford, you have the funds provided to you by Matchbook. Obviously, we all trust you so much with your picks this week. Who is included in this week's Matchbook Betting Exchange bet on the Irish NFL Show?
Well, first and foremost, we rebounded well last week. We had a winner. So for anybody who followed us last week, they would have had a few quid in their pocket last Monday. And this week is a difficult week because we've had some mixed predictions, and it's hard to kind of get a consistent number across the board. So I've had to overrule some of you. So it's all on me this week if it goes wrong. The Raiders to beat the Eagles, the Patriots to beat the Jets. I know you've gone for the Jets, Michael. But you went for the Texans last week and we overruled you and went for the Colts. The Bucks to beat the Bears and the Panthers to beat my Giants. So they're the 4 this week. The Raiders, the Patriots, the Bucks, the Panthers, paying in the region of 11-4, nearly 3-1. That's our pick this week. Thanks to Matchbook who partner up with and look after us financially to place these bets. And we've had a reasonably good start to the season. So if you've been betting with us each week, you're on the up. So Raiders, Patriots, Bucks, Panthers. Do gamble responsibly.
Yeah, £15 or €15 welcome offer, Brian. Code Irish NFL Show money back as cash if your first bet loses. In terms of the exchange this week, the 49ers with the -4.5 handicap are one of the most backed teams this week. The Bengals +6 with the Ravens, the Raiders -3 with the Eagles, and Washington +7.5 against the Packers. They were +9.5 to start off the week. They came in to +7.5. That's intriguing. Who the hell, in my opinion, thinks that's going to happen? But that's very interesting. But again, thanks so much, as you said, Brian, and as the lad said as well, to Team Matchbook for their consistent and fantastic support of the Irish NFL Show. And looking forward to seeing this bet win this week, even if I am wrong in some of my picks. Gimme a win after midnight. Finally, the Colts. Oh, I tell you what, whoever thought this. I mean, I am stunned NBC having forced CBS's or Fox's hand and flexed this into Sunday Night Football. The 2-4 Colts against the 2-3 49ers. I'm going to start off, if you don't mind. Jimmy G's playing. I like Jimmy G. It's primetime, baby. It's in Levi Stadium. I'm taking the 49ers to win this. I think little combination, little Debo, little win to the 49ers, boys, and the 49ers go free and free. Colin, who have you got?
Yeah, Jimmy G. Jimmy G's like Dennis Bergkamp. He doesn't have to be fit. He has to feel that he's fit. And if Jimmy G doesn't feel that he's not 100%, forget about it. He doesn't want to be there. Doesn't want to be on the field. Doesn't want to be on a plane. Doesn't want to be anywhere. This is like an interesting one, because I was like critical of Carson Wentz, his approach over the summer. I think Carson Wentz can be a good QB. I just thought over the summer, Frank Reich brought him in, put a whole lot of faith in him, and it felt like, it was kind of the Carson Wentz show. But he has been getting better and better as the last few weeks have been going on. Playing on a couple of sprained ankles, the team have responded to him. He had his highest ever grade, PFF grade, last week, despite like his 2017 almost MVP like season where he was absolutely brilliant. So I think that the Colts, like, it helped to having T.Y. Hilton back, because he's just a phenomenal player. He just makes things happen when he's on the field, and they've realized that they need to lean into Jonathan Taylor, who continues to be look, Derrick Henry is in the stratosphere. Nick Chubb is just below him, but I would put Jonathan Taylor just below that, because I think Taylor is a fantastic runner, and I think that the Colts are on a really good run. I think they can surprise a Niners team who are still like injury plagued. They see like there's a lot of people who are questionable for today, and I think losing George Kittle, who I think is really kind of the emotional heart of that team, and really makes other players around him so much better, because he puts his heart and soul, his body on the line constantly. I think that's it's huge to not have him there. I think the Colts can go back to 3-4. I think it might be very good news for the Eagles more than anyone. But for the Colts, for them, the biggest frustration I think would be giving up that 19-point lead, because they realistically could be sitting at 3-3 on this. I think the Colts are going to get the win tonight.
Yeah, and Jimmy G said he's been flying all week, which is quite the opposite to anything Dennis Bergkamp has done throughout his career. But I'm in agreement with you, Colin. I said last week, I said only one team has gone 1-5 and made the playoffs in the last decade, and that was the Colts in 2018. And I see familiarities to that situation, because if they do get over the hump and win this week, they play the Titans next week in a game which has gone topsy-turvy throughout the years, and then they've got the Jets, and then they've got the Jags, so they could make a real run at it. Wentz didn't throw an interception last week, nor did he throw an interception in Baltimore. Despite the loss in Baltimore and giving away that 19-point lead, I felt that after that game there would have been the kind of conversation. Look how well we can play against arguably one of the best teams in the AFC on our day, where we can give anybody a game. Jonathan Taylor, it's no coincidence that they're talking about Marlon Mack being traded before the deadline. Between Hines and Taylor, they have their two running backs now. The 49ers haven't given up 100+ yards in running to a running back since week 9 of the 2019 season. I think that's going to change on Sunday. And I'm going for the Colts, who are going for 5 wins in a row against the 49ers, which is quite a unique stat. And for me, I think the Colts will go in and win and cement their opportunity to go and beat Titans next week and make this division really interesting.
Oh, it's the reunion alarm again. Because, of course, there is a reunion in this game. DeForest Buckner, who was traded away to the Colts for a first-round pick, is going back to the 49ers. And he's already commented on the fact that he's looking forward to the matchup, as you can imagine. Jonathan Taylor, you're absolutely right, guys. He's a superstar. But I do think you're underplaying the impact of throwing away that game against the Ravens. I mean, I watched the majority of that game live, and I was really impressed by the Colts now they're coming out and the drives they were putting together, but they threw it away. They don't have the consistency. I still don't believe in Carson Wentz. I don't know, since his injuries, if I've ever truly believed in Carson Wentz. Maybe he's a figment of my imagination. Maybe it's like Peter Pan or something, and it's never to be the boy who didn't grow up. But the 49ers, yeah, they're 2-3. Just let's think, and they're on a 3-game losing streak, but let's just think about the 3 games they were. They lost 30-28 against the Packers. They lost by a touchdown against the Seahawks, who had Russell Wilson at the time in an intra-division game. And of course, then they lost against the Cards 17-10 in another intra-division game. Those intra-division games are tough. They're bloody good teams, and they've had a bye since. So for once, the 49ers had a chance to get some people healthy, get back, rest up, and reset. For me, I hear what you're saying about the Colts, but the name of the game, there's your ABBA reference, Michael. The name of the game is still putting points on the board, stopping the other team from scoring, having consistency in the passing game and the running game on both sides of the ball. And I see that coming far more consistently from the 49ers than I see from the Colts. I don't think the 49ers are ready to give up on their season just yet either, even though they are in the toughest division in football. And indeed, the Russell Wilson injury and the impact on the Seahawks gives them hope that they can still put a charge together and maybe mount a claim on one of those NFC wildcard spots, which are definitely more up for grabs. For me, the 49ers actually have sufficient firepower to overcome the Colts in this game, to contain Jonathan Taylor in the running game, and to make Carson Wentz look very, very human. So 49ers for me.
And that's it. That is it. That is the Week 7 slate apart from Monday Night Football previewed. Look, it's nothing special. It's a bit of a bore, but I guess if I tell a joke, you probably heard it before, Mark. Yeah. So I want to thank you all for the picks, for giving them to me. That's it this week from the Irish NFL show, boys. Week 7 is done. I want to thank Trust Gaming, Matchbook Betting Exchange, and also remind everyone watching today's show that if you do retweet this pinned tweet today, you have the chance of winning a Game Pass sub for NFL Game Pass, a gaming share, and also a gaming headset with thanks to Trust Gaming and Gamer Store Ireland. Any final points? Colin, I'll start with you.
Yeah, just I get in some ways some of Mark's reticence around Carson Wentz. There are questions, undoubtedly, given everything that happened last year in particular. But this year, in terms of starters in the league who played, he's one interception. No one comes, no one else, no other starter is there. So he's taking care of the ball. It's really interesting. The Colts just seem to do this. They like to dig themselves into a hole and then try and find their way out of it. I think it'll be interesting. If they lose tonight, it's game over. And so essentially for the Colts, every game is a playoff game right now.
Well, the two games, and we've touched on it, the most intriguing games for me is the Bengals against the Ravens and the Chiefs against the Titans. Like, the Bengals are in a situation where a lot is expected of them tonight going into this game against the Ravens. And we saw last week, the Chargers went in and got blown out by the Ravens. Will we see something similar? And then we'll lower expectations on the Bengals potentially. And then what Chiefs are we going to see? We're going to see this Chiefs that we've seen over the years that is so efficient offensively and their defense is reasonably good. Or are we going to see the craziness that we've seen in the first few weeks for the inconsistency, and you're going up against a really good Titans? Two great games. And there's quite a number of intriguing, interesting games. But for you boys, it's great because you have the Sunday off, stressing about your own team. You can relax, enjoy Red Zone, enjoy Sky's coverage, and think of what could have been on Thursday night.
Yeah, I mean, look, isn't it funny? Well, I said at the start, there's not that many interesting games. There's not that many games between two good teams, right? There's only probably two of them in this slate of games. But there are storylines which abound in all of the games. There's intrigue in all of them. When you're watching the games this Sunday, especially the late games, just have the reunion alarm, going, a reunion alert, klaxon going on a constant basis. And of course, we're going to watch it, and there's going to be great plays being made. And some of your picks have surprised me already this evening, boys. So I'd say there's plenty of surprises more at hand every given Sunday, not just any given Sunday, but every given Sunday in the NFL.
You mean some of the picks that surprised you this morning on the Irish NFL show?
That's exactly what I said, Michael. This morning.
I love that new black background you have in the back of your house. It looks fantastic.
It's a nice reflection. Yeah.
I can't wait to see who we're apologizing to on Monday night.
Well,
I'm going to be live.
You're recording at 6 o'clock on a Sunday morning. I mean, of course it's going to be dark.
No, we're live. We're live. Hi, everyone watching live. We're back tomorrow night, officially, fully live. I'm live from Portugal. Hopefully the Wi-Fi holds up, boys. If not, I nominate David Duval over there to do the live presenting.
Actually, can I say that to you? Well, by the way, it's weird. Well, ever since then, I was wondering about the origin of that, because I knew there was a William Pope Duval who was governor of Florida Territory, and I kind of went, "Oh, was it related to him?" And it is, because they named Duval County after him, and that's where they take the chant from, because Jacksonville was based in Duval County. So random.
If you're a Jags fan, enjoy the bye this week. If your team's on a bye, enjoy the bye this week. That is us for week 7 of the Irish NFL show. See you tomorrow night live from 10 p.m. as we build up to the Saints against the Seahawks. Enjoy your NFL Sunday, folks. We're almost halfway through the season.